Hi, I'm Lisa McCoy with the University of Maryland Extension, and we're here to talk about slow cooking. And the best part is it's very a fast and easy cleanup. You put food in earlier in the day, and then dinner is ready, and you don't spend a lot of time in the kitchen yourself. So there are a few food safety concerns I want to mention first. One is the danger zone, and this is the temperature where food tends to multiply and have bacteria that multiplies rapidly and can cause food poisoning. So you want to keep your food out of the temperature range from 40 degrees to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. There are some things that you can do with your slow cooker that will help to prevent those foods from being in the danger zone. One is that you can preheat your slow cooker before you add your food, and that way it's already warmed up and you won't have to have that time for it to get heated up. Another idea is to perhaps start the cooking time on high first until the food gets to 140 degrees out of the danger zone, and then you can turn it to low for the remainder of the cooking. If you're adding frozen or refrigerated foods, you want to make sure that you defrost those or bring them to room temperature, because you can imagine if you add something really cold like that, it's going to bring the whole temperature of the food inside the slow cooker down into that danger zone. It's important not to overload your slow cooker. The slow cooker should be about 1/2 at least to 2/3 full, and no fuller than that. Sometimes we tend to put it all the way up to the very top. What happens is you're not getting a good heat transfer through all of the liquids and foods that are in there. So you don't want to overstuff that slow cooker. And also you want to make sure you have liquid to cover the food, that you have enough liquid in there that's going to create the steam, because that is what helps it to cook and to keep the food warm and to cook all the way through that heat transfer. And one of the last tips I want to give you about keeping the temperature at the right level is don't take the lid off during the cooking. I know we get tempted to check on it, but what happens as soon as you lift that lid, the temperature will drop 10 to 15 degrees, and that could increase your cooking time by 30 minutes. So now you know why they always have glass lids on those crock pots, because you don't need to open the lid to see what's happening inside. So let's give you some tips on cooking with your slow cooker. One thing is you have to think about where you're going to put the food as you're placing it into the slow cooker. If you have food that takes longer to cook, you want to put that closer to the bottom, like say some root vegetables like potatoes or carrots. They should go towards the bottom of the slow cooker because it's going to take longer for them to cook. If you have meat that you want to have browned, you're going to need to brown that on the stove before you add it to the slow cooker, because the slow cooker does not brown food. It just cooks it, but it doesn't brown it. And the other thing you keep in mind is that if you have vegetables that don't require a lot of cooking, or if you have pasta or rice, you want to add that towards the end of the cooking so the vegetables don't become really soggy and limp, and your pasta does not get mushy or your rice get very mushy. So you have to kind of add things sometimes in stages depending on what you're cooking. Now, if you want to adapt recipes that you have at home that you like for soups or things like that, here are some tips on how to know how long should you cook them in a slow cooker. First of all, the recipe needs to have a temperature cooking time of 45 minutes or more. So if regular recipe says to cook it for 45 minutes, for a slow cooker you're going to put it in for 3 to 4 hours on high, or 6 to 8 hours on low. If it takes 60 minutes, you're going to put it in for 4 to 5 hours on high, or 8 to 10 hours on low. So you can easily adapt or just use a recipe that you find in a crockpot cookbook, but then just adapt it to what your likes are. So it's not too hard to adapt those recipes. Finally, I'm going to tell you how can you test to see if your slow cooker is still working properly. Some of you out there may have slow cookers that you've had for, oh, I don't even want to know. I did a workshop and I think some people had their cooker for like 30 years or more. So they sometimes do not work as well anymore. So you need to kind of check them every once in a while. And to do that, what you want to do is you want to fill it 1/2 to 2/3 full with water, put the lid on, and turn it on low for 8 hours. And then after 8 hours, take the lid off and quickly use a thermometer to test the water. It should be about 185 degrees. If it's not hot enough, then that tells you that it's not, your food that you're cooking is not getting hot enough to stay out of that danger zone. And you probably need to buy a new one. Well, let me give you some tips on picking out a new crock pot. One thing, I'll just give you 3 things. One is you want to pick the size that works for you. If you live alone or there's only 2 or 3 of you in the house, then you don't need a really huge crock pot. Get one that's a little bit smaller. Or if you like to cook a lot of soup to freeze, then you may want the larger one. So determine what your needs are and pick the size that best fits you. The next thing is make sure it has a removable liner so that you can just easily put it in the dishwasher and it's easier cleanup. The old ones, if you remember, they didn't come apart. You had to carefully wash the inside of that without attaching the electrical cord or anything. And the third thing, especially for those with aging eyes, is you want to make sure that you can read the dial and read the temperature and the controls. So make sure you're getting one that's easy for you to use. Thank you for joining me, and I hope that you enjoy your slow cooker.